Nice view, John.
Thank you.
Yay, and it worked.
Fantastic.
Actually pretty knowledge.
Thanks again for your patience and understanding with the last meeting.
It stayed pretty good.
I'm glad you guys were able to work it out. It sounds like it was a mystery.
A big mystery.
Yes, and I'm delighted to find a place for it. I have 2 boxes of market books in my car for tomorrow, and I'll bring you a tablecloth tomorrow. I want this stuff in my pile somewhere.
To be able to give me 25,000 this afternoon. We got to vote on it for the Friends. Oh, there's John from France. How about that?
Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
Ashley, you haven't heard from Phil, have you?
I have not heard from Phil, and I
Yeah,
double checked that nothing came in the last few minutes.
I saw him Thursday at the the breakfast that we had.
I don't have anything from Phil.
No, we just give him another minute or two and then we'll get started.
Still too, I mean, it still needs to be louder for me.
I can't have it go. I
Oh.
can't go any louder right now.
Oh,
My
okay.
speakers are.
Nice to see everybody's faces in the city buildings.
Yes.
Oh, I guess I need to be over further.
There you go.
There we go. I don't want to crowd you out of it.
It's okay. It's nice. I want over here. I got the heater going.
All right, I'm going to suggest we get started. Obviously, if Phil joins us, he can, but we have a quorum. So, and I know we have a long list because we haven't gotten together for a little while. So, so my suggestion is we just get started, and like I said, hopefully Phil will join us, and we'll go from there. So, can we get let's see. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Can we get a roll call?
John Krischer,
Here.
Susan Murphy,
Here.
Bill Perdue is absent. Tara Twomey.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. So public appearances first on the list. I know we have Leanne coming later in our orders of business. I do not see anybody from the public, so we will move on to announcements from announcements from the trustee. Any announcements, John?
No, I'm hoping to give, we have to vote today for Friends of the Library meeting after this. And I'm hoping to give the library 25,000, but we will see what happens, the meeting.
That would be amazing. The Friends do a magnificent job, and we like to see you out there at Farmers Market. John?
Oh, the other thing I have to say, I went to one of the children's programs in the park, and it was really nice. It was cute, and I really enjoyed it. She does a
Excellent.
great job.
Excellent. Yeah, I have been meaning to, actually, it's going to be this morning. Don't we have one coming this morning? Yeah. I might be out and about town, might stop by. All right. Ashley, any announcements?
We are working on recruitment. I have a new part-time staff member that will be starting mid-month, so I'm excited about that. And then I'm still working with HR on our full-time recruitments, library assistant and head of reference. And then also in progress, we're doing interviews this week with 2 companies for RFID services. And so hopefully we'll have one of those companies chosen so we can move forward on that project. And I'll have a contract for all of you to take a look at in the next meeting. And we're also meeting this week with 2 architects regarding the master plan, and that's later this week. So we're slowly getting back into things, but forward progress is being made, and the library is in a good place right now.
And Ashley, our current hours are Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday?
They are. And so
Okay.
when we have our new part-time staff member on, I'm looking at making adjustments to the schedule and seeing where we can add in hours, probably Thursdays I'm looking at this point. And then my biggest goal is Saturdays, and that's that one's a little trickier. I need to do some work with HR on that and shifting our schedules to be Tuesday through Saturday, which 10 to 6, which I think is going to be great for the public. So
Great. And the days that I just listed, those are all 10 to 6, right?
all 10 to 6
In both
buildings, same hours. So it's just the same days,
Great.
and that'll be the goal then too, is 10 to 6. Tuesday through Saturday will be the ultimate goal. Right now it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, 10 to 6, both buildings.
Right. Terrific. Let's see. So I think that's all on our announcements. We can move into orders of business. So receive a report from the Children's Librarian, Leanne McDonald, on children department activities. And Leanne, thanks for joining us today. It's nice to meet you and see you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm really happy to finally be seeing you guys and be at the meeting. And I just want to thank everybody that I work with and for welcoming me and, empowering me to do a lot of really great things. I think that a lot of times people don't know what we do. And, it's funny because people think we read all the time. And I always tell people I don't read adult books, so don't ask me about adult books. Just kidding. But I really don't read a lot of adult books. But I just kind of want to share with you guys what I've been doing over the past 4 months. So I've been really focused on the collection. And when I came in, there were a lot of great books. This library has a lot of great books. But there were a lot of things that I felt were maybe outdated or we needed to have replacement copies. That the books had been really loved, classic books or books that, are really popular. So I've been working really hard on replacing those. And the latest statistic that I've gotten is that I've purchased 1,000 books since I've been here, which is so exciting. And I've had a lot of great feedback from the community about how it feels in here, how it looks in here, all the new books. We have a lot of patrons that come in and their children will take out, 20 to 60 books every week or 2 weeks. So that could be a family of, 2 children. It could be a family of 4 children. But what I'm seeing is we're having a lot of people from our city, from our town, but also from the area. So we're having a really good mix of both. And so one of the areas that I identified that was kind of missing is something that we call read-alongs. And that is a book, like a traditional book with you know, in the past, it's been like a CD that, you know, the child can listen to the story, and then it teaches them to turn the page and read along. So something that's current, more current than that old school kind of thing is something called a Wonder Book. And so we decided to order these books, and I wanted to show them to you guys. It has a built-in speaker, and you can plug it in, and you can also plug headphones into this. And so what I did is I ordered like a sampling of about 30. So this one you can see is like a chapter book, and it is, you know, it's pretty, you know, it's pretty long here. And then I also ordered some picture books and some bilingual picture books as well. So that's something new, and we haven't put them out yet. We're still processing them, but I think people are going to be really excited about those. It also has to do with accessibility. So, you know, for somebody who has a hard time reading, or maybe is vision impaired or something, it kind of crosses over into accessibility as well. And adults can also use them as well. So that's really exciting. And then also for programming, I mean, I have like a whole, I don't want to take up too much time, but just over the summer, Margie had planned all the summer events, and they were really well attended, and they were wonderful. We got lots of great feedback. We gave away a lot of books at our final, the final event, summer event as well. And then we also collaborated with CYC over the summer, and they came in like twice a week, and we had structured like stuff for them to do, to kind of help them know about the library, and just have them be in here and do projects with us and stuff like that. And we also have 2 art projects that we're installing in our library from CYC. One of them is a project where a local artist collaborated with them, where they picked up trash off the beach, and then they sunk the trash in resin, and they made these kind of sculptures, and those are going to go up on our wall this week. And there's going to be a photographic kind of explanation of what the project was about. And also, I did start story time again in September, and it's been, you know, it started off a little bit slow, and we're kind of building up, but it's been really fun. It's just about a 15-minute stories and rhymes and songs, and then we've done large, big tanks of bubbles where everybody gets bubble wands, and we do bubbles together. I started doing this calendar where I just have my programs on here. And then this month I added the community event programs. So the pumpkin roll and the Halloween parade and all that kind of stuff. So it's all kind of on one little thing that parents can take home and put on the refrigerator and stuff and remember. And then we're also just doing a lot of other fun stuff in the library. So we're doing like a little scavenger hunt for October, so that when kids come in, they have something fun that they can do. There's been a lot of parents have told me, this is the first time my child has been in the library, because maybe they were born right before the pandemic or during the pandemic. So it's just been kind of interesting in that way to kind of reconnect with families. As far as circulation, I don't have the numbers for the last, right here with me for the last month, but I know within the first couple of months, our circulation went up by about 25% in children's. So that's been really great too, to see that. So I'm also starting a program on Fridays this month. So it's going to alternate. It's going to be game time and Lego time. So every other week, and it's going to be all ages. So in one area, I'm going to have Legos, and the other area, I'm going to have blocks for, babies and smaller children. So I'm just really trying to be really inclusive of age and ability so that families feel really comfortable coming in and bringing all their children. And so that's kind of what I've been working on. A lot.
Sarah, you're muted.
Yeah, I know. So Leanne, that all sounds wonderful. I was going to see if the trustees had any questions for you while we have you. Susan, do you have any questions or comments for Leanne?
Well, we already talked about, I was a little concerned because if you look at the magazine circulation for the months, it's been really, really low. But she and I talked about it they went on really, by the way, thank you for the nice breakfast we had for the librarians the other day. And we talked about it then, so I think it's solved.
Excellent, great. John, do you have any comments or questions for Leanne?
The only comment, I've had quite a few conversations with the children's librarian when I sign my checks. So she's really involved and she's explained to what's going on. So she's doing a great job.
Great. And for myself, I'm happy to see the children's programs coming back. So Leanne, my kids grew up in that library. And I'm grateful that other kids have that opportunity. The pandemic was challenging for the library, for everybody. So I'm really happy to hear that kids are back in the library. I love that some of the programs have moved to the park because I think that provides a safe kind of environment and people feel comfortable doing that. So I'm hoping maybe to walk by today and see how it's going after this meeting. So
okay.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
It's great to see all that stuff getting going again.
Thank you. Thank you guys for the opportunity.
Yeah, we're very, very lucky to have Leanne. I couldn't be more pleased. And like she said, I think she's selling herself short on ordering. I think it was like her first month here before the end of the fiscal year. She ordered our new tech services librarian, who also started at the beginning of June, said she ordered 1,000 books in a month, which is impressive, and the collection looks amazing. So we're very lucky to have her. The staff all love working with her and partnering her on programs and projects inside kids, and it's really great dynamic crew, and we're very lucky to have you here with us, and so is the community.
And we've also been selling a lot of your discards at the market and making more money for your books for the library.
Okay. Circle of Book Life.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leanne.
All right. Well, again, welcome, Leanne. Thanks for coming to the meeting today and giving us an update. I think we all will hopefully see you around town and in the library, and look forward to many great things to come. All right. Alex, receive a report from the Carmel Public Library Foundation on recent activities.
Yes, thank you so much. Good morning, trustees and everyone. I just wanted to comment that it's been really fun getting to know Leanne. I stopped by and we chat, and she's been giving me updates as well. And I think she's also going to be a really great conduit for identifying potential donors and families who want to get more involved with the library. So I left you some of my business cards by the front desk. But so I think that'll be terrific. So Carmel Public Library Foundation, we had our board retreat a few weeks ago. Went really well. Last Thursday, we had the librarian appreciation breakfast, which was really wonderful. It was a great opportunity for the foundation and all of the players to say thank you and acknowledge how much we appreciate our librarians, the new ones we wanted to welcome, but also all of the librarians for keeping the library going throughout these last challenging years, which was quite the feat. curbside to outdoor to opening up part-time now. Just really excited to have us back in operation. We launched our annual programs with a full audience. For our September program, we have a program next week with an author, and it's a coming of age story that takes place in London in the 70s. And it's going to be an interview style, and that's going to be fun. And then on October 26th, we'll be at the Forest Theater with a film screening of Bohemian Soul. So history of Bohemia in Carmel, which will be really fun. Monterey County Gives accepted our proposal to participate once again, and we're going to be raising funds for systems and communications for the library. So that's exciting. And we have 3 new board members, Bob Kramer, Sarah McCary, Diane Danvers Simmons, and a new finance committee member, Cynthia McCoy, who's a former board president. And so we're really, really excited to have her back on board, since she knows our foundation so well and loves the library. And then lastly, our fall newsletter has been completed and mailed as we speak. And our annual campaign with this year's theme, Get Inspired, is in development, and that'll probably drop in the next couple of weeks. And the search continues for our annual event speaker. It went from a potential Michelle Obama to not that. And now I'm heavily pursuing Tara Westover, who wrote Educated, who I think is pretty phenomenal. And I have some other ideas in my back pocket, but we're always looking for your input. And that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions or anything?
So Alex, I love that you say that's all you have. As usual, an impressive list of things going on. Again, let me turn to the trustees first. I'll start with John this time. John, do you have any questions or comments for Alex?
No, I don't. I'm sorry I missed the breakfast. I happened to be away, but she has an awful lot of good things going on right now.
France is a good excuse.
Susan, any comments or questions?
Thank you for the breakfast. Phil was there, and it was really nice to see everybody and to talk to people, and had questions and hear their stories and so forth. So thank you, Alex. And also the speaker was absolutely wonderful on the last thing at Carpenter Hall, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Susan, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Sounds like a full plate as usual for you going forward. All right. Next up on our agenda, approval of the minutes for July 27th, 2022 regular meeting, which I believe was actually the last meeting that we had. We do not have meeting. We do not have minutes for August or for September because we weren't able to get together. But I would just ask, are there any comments or corrections to the meetings from the July meeting from the trustees? And if not, can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll motion we approve it.
And a second?
I second it.
Thank you both. Leslie? Oh.
Leslie, you're muted.
Sorry, I double clicked myself. John Krischer.
Yes.
Susan Murphy. Susan.
Here, yes.
Tara Twomey.
Yes.
Approved, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, librarian's report. For July and August is what it says, but we'll just let you run with it, Ashley.
Yes, it is July and August. Things to take note of. We saw, the summer reading uptick in our circulation for kids. So if you look at that, you'll see our increase in kids circulation during that time as people were in and out more. We usually see a dip after summer reading in the month of August, especially because kids are getting back into school and we've got car week. It just kind of is a weird month for library services. And we typically take the month off of August to between summer reading and the start of, kind of in our minds, school year, getting into the thick of things in September to do program planning, so story time. So we didn't have story time started until September. So just that little up and down of things. Our numbers are still staying pretty strong for electronic checkout. So that is remaining popular despite, coming out of the pandemic. And I know we have more hours, other libraries have more hours, but that continues to be popular, which I'm very pleased with. It is another medium for listening to books or reading them electronically when you're traveling. So we're really able to meet many needs and work on our ordering there. And there's another consortium that I'll be bringing forward that the state has started called the Palaces Initiative, where they're purchasing additional books and kind of, in addition to what we've got going on in Overdrive, the state is also making it in an overall investment into these things. So I'm looking at seeing what it would look like if we started contributing to that online library going forward. But it is free and open to everybody. And I actually have the app on my phone and have tested it out. A lot of things that are in the public domain, so things that are classics, but they're slowly adding to those, and libraries are making that investment so that we have this whole online library for the entire state of California, which I think is terrific. Going back to the monthly reports, our visit counts were up overall for the HML building in August. Some of that foot traffic may have been Car Week. We're not typically open during Car Week. We usually take that time for training, but since we've been closed Thursdays, we were still open during that week. And then we also saw an uptick in visits in August as well in the Youth Services Department. Local history kind of comes in waves. And the more that we've been able to get our collections up online, we're seeing an increase in email questions, which is great. People from all over the world who want to learn about Carmel or know about Carmel can now go look at all of the pine cones. And the great thing is, I think some would say, well, you've got everything up online, you don't need to have a librarian. The great thing about having everything up online is it spawns so many questions. It's like, oh, I have one question. It's like, great, I will direct you to the pine cones online. And they come back with 75 more questions and a whole bunch more people to research. So it's really, really great to have things out there. I was subbing in for Katie one day, and one of our scrapbooks that we had scanned through the California Revealed project is online now. And somebody came in and wanted to see the original scrapbook and the original photos, and also some that another researcher had used from us and built a Wikipedia page, and they wanted to see those original photos. So it was really great to see that connection between what we're doing online and how people are interacting with the library now. So foot traffic with local history kind of comes in waves, but we also have a lot of reference questions that are coming in over the phone and on email. And then I've been keeping tabs in particular on our wireless usage in the buildings. We're not keeping statistics on the computers, the in-house computers at this point, because we're working on still getting them moved over to a different system and increasing the number of them. But since the pandemic, our Wi-Fi usage has shot up and is still maintaining those high levels of people being outside and using the wireless or coming inside to do their work, which I think is terrific. And then as you can see in August, we don't have any program numbers because that was the end of summer reading. So you'll be seeing more numbers as CPLF programs are starting and as Leanne's programs start to gain a real audience, and we'll have an uptick there as well. And we're talking amongst the staff that are here about some potential in-house programs, game type of things like Leanne's doing, but for adults over at the main library. About a month or two ago, we brought the puzzle back. So our diehards who, they've got their routine and have told us, I can't have a puzzle at my house, but I can come here and work on the puzzle for half an hour before I go pick up my mail. So that's back again, and everybody seems to be very pleased with puzzle time again. So overall, our statistics look good. When you look at them compared to last year to date, we were still doing, in July, we were still doing outside library, and where we're transitioning into in August in open hours. So you see those numbers start to jump up again. So when you look at that last year to date, it's not that we jumped so much in service levels, it's that 2021 was a weird anomaly year for how we were doing library services. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. Again, I'm going to go back to the trustees. Susan, I know you're sitting right next to Ashley, but you can turn and look to her and ask her if you have any questions or comments. Nope. All right. John, any questions or comments for Ashley on the librarian's report?
No, I don't. Thanks.
Okay. So Ashley, I have a couple. Just do we have any sense of whether the teen space is getting used again?
We actually, so Leanne mentioned earlier that we had the Carmel Youth Center coming to visit. So they were doing two things. They had, they were coming to the Park Branch Library. I think they call them the Littles. The Littles were coming to the Park Branch Library. And then the older kids who are, you know, tweens, so not quite that teenage level yet. They were doing some programs over at the Main with Aubrey and Renee. And so they were getting acclimated to that teen space, getting comfortable there because that's where they will transition. I'd have to ask the staff in terms of, a lot of times it's just us observing them, but I think we're starting to see more teens start to come in again, which is great. They like that space as a study space and a hangout space, which is really great. And one of the next places that we're talking about tackling is working on the collections there and rebuilding our relationship with the high school, because the librarian that we were working so closely with left during the pandemic. So we got some great things done before she left, like connecting our overdrive with what the high school was doing so that the high school students didn't have to come to us to get a library card to use our collections or register for just another thing they can use their student ID. So we're going to be doing that and really looking at what those collections are and seeing how we can engage teens. And I'm also, as we're working on doing these recruitments, it's something that I am certainly looking at, and you know, depending on the candidate, I think it's a real asset to have somebody coming in that's got that really strong teen experience for that type of programming. So that's my goal when we get somebody in that seat permanently for the head of reference in particular, that's got a strong background working with teens. Great. And have we, as you said, I think there's probably been some turnover in the librarians in the school district. Have we connected with the middle school and the River School librarians? That's on the list, and Leanne's in progress.
Actually, I have been emailing and reaching out to several of the schools around the area, and I didn't hear back from anybody. So I just was like, I'm just going to do it again. So I emailed a few days ago, and I heard back from a couple of the librarians, one from the River School and one from, I can't remember the other school off the top of my head. Yes, I am very much, you know, trying to, you know, connect. And I actually am speaking to the librarian from the River School on Friday. We have an appointment to talk on Friday. I also am like kind of percolating in the back of my mind, hoping to maybe come up with some kind of an author visit, maybe in the new year. And so I want to collaborate with the schools in the area, but also just for, you know, just for outreach for programs, and maybe to go do story times there, or to collaborate in some kind of way with the schools, is on my radar, and hopefully I'll be able to dedicate some more time to that.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you've been busy, but I'm glad you've been able to at least touch base with somebody at River. And what about, you know, and the other group that I think, right, Ashley, the tweens, as you mentioned, are a tough group, because I think that's actually where you see there's a lot of emphasis on reading in the elementary schools. Mm-hmm. And then people start trailing off, right? And so kind of keeping kids reading or engaged through those middle school years is a tough time. So something to, yeah, so I definitely think that's a place for us to continue to look at programs. And I know programs are a little wonky at that age, and we don't necessarily get a lot of participation, but things to think
be
about.
as simple as ordering things that maybe the school libraries aren't going to order because they're ordering required reading types of things. And so if we've got people who might be reluctant readers or are starting to trail off, but they're obsessed with manga, we'll order a bunch of it and keep them reading. Different way of reading, but still reading. And so there's ways that we can balance out those needs. And that's why I think it's so important to have those relationships with the school to understand how they operate and how they're ordering, but also to better meet the needs of that. And our teams too. I know that they have my understanding from the previous high school librarians that they have a whole different way of ordering books that's there's more of an approvals process than we go through, which is using our professional expertise and listening to the community. And they have some more restrictions in place with that. So that's where we can support them.
I also like the idea, Leanne, of the new books that you're ordering with the audio component, because I think what happens is, kids that struggle with reading maybe then just don't find these alternatives that, whether it's an audio book or something like that, that could keep them engaged in that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming that they also make those for teens, but I think that's also a place we can look at things.
Yeah, I mean that, and I also feel like graphic novels are a big area where, basically people that are, I don't know, like, I don't want to beat the graphic novel drum too hard, but I really believe in graphic novels. We actually, something that I think is really awesome here is that we have a separate section for nonfiction graphic novels. So let's say a child wants to read, they have to do a biography report. Well, I mean, and they don't like reading. Well, we have a lot of great biographies, and some of them are longer, some of them are shorter, some of them are kind of engaging, but maybe they just don't like that. And I think that fills a gap, especially the nonfiction. And also graphic novels tend to deal with a lot of subject matter that is of interest to that tween teen group. And they do it in a way that is appealing. And I think that, we think about ourselves and how we choose books. We're going to look at the art on the cover. We're going to read about it. We're going to read about the author. And there's different elements that are going to be appealing to us. And so I think all librarians kind of try to fight the stigma of graphic novels, but in reality, graphic novels have a lot of higher concepts, and they have they're teaching a lot of different things. They're teaching storyboarding, they're teaching like almost acting, just different types of skills, different ways of thinking and of approaching a subject. So I like to talk to parents about why graphic novels are good. And I actually moved the graphic novels to the front of the library, and we're going to do a stained glass window display for that little section. So just of like book covers and popular books and stuff. Because, you often hear parents say, those aren't real books, or, whatever. So yeah. The end.
Great. Great. Okay, so sorry, I had a couple of things based on what you said, Ashley. So, did we approve you said the Wi-Fi? You're not keeping track of the Wi-Fi usage in the building, and did we already approve funding to switch to some kind of tablet or other kind of?
So we do keep track of the wireless in the building, and then it extends outside the building. So that's what we're keeping track of. What we're not keeping track of, besides just with our eyeballs, is in-house computer use. So those public computers in particular at the Main. So right. There are funds, and in fact, CPLF has a small sum for us to expend for catalog stations in the computer, whether those are tablets or not. The tablets are working fine at the Main. I'd like something bigger. that would be more helpful. And we need a catalog station in the kids department so that parents and kids can be empowered to search for things on their own if they want to use the catalog. Everybody can also use their phones because it works in the library. I realized that the other day, we're all carrying computers in our pockets. So yes, those funds are approved. One of my challenges right now is working with IT. They have a lot going on. We are onboarding a lot of new employees, not to mention the continual issues that are plaguing us with supply chain. So for instance, part of the computer replacement project at the Main involves if you go in there now, there's a copy machine and 2 giant printers that are taking up space that could be used for computers. We're going to go down to 1 unit that works with the coin operated so people can just pay for their prints independently of coming to the desk. But Xerox is still, at this point in time, filling orders that were placed in May or June. So we are facing a serious backlog. And so it's the 2 printers, 1 for each building at the library, but also the rest of the city. So we're sitting tight and waiting, but there's no amount of me shouting at anybody that's going to make our copy machines get here faster. So
yeah,
those projects.
No, it was just a question of, my recollection was that you were funded for what you needed, and I just wanted to make sure that that was the case. And then just the last thing is, it's probably still too early. I think we probably have another year to go before we start looking at comparisons between kind of pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. It seems like we're just not quite there yet, but obviously we're seeing large increases in the circulations numbers. I have not pulled out my 2019 numbers to kind of get a sense. Do you have just a rough sense of how that compares? Details aren't necessary.
No, but I have been tracking it because I'm excited that we're open. It's exciting to see more people in the buildings. And so I have been looking at that myself. If we're looking at circulation statistics, which that's the number that I typically compare with going back to 2019, when you look at the overall circ number, and I'm including electronic checkouts in that, we're really close to where we were 2019. So our in-person checkouts, it's the electronic checkouts that are getting us to that close number. We're still not there. And I think it's going to be slow. And I think Saturdays are going to be integral for us to be building up those numbers again and doing outreach and getting back in the community. But that's still pretty impressive. And community, Carmel, I was reading as part of our master plan project, going back and looking at some of our historic documents. Carmel has always had the highest books per capita, reading per capita of all of the cities on the peninsula. And that just continued during the pandemic and continues now. So when I do that comparison, I feel good about where we are right now and how we're increasing in terms of circulation and foot traffic in the buildings.
Great. Thank you. That's even better than what I was hoping for.
Yeah,
in terms of you have the numbers already. That's great.
Yes, I'm a nerd for that. I like looking and doing those comparisons.
Excellent. All right. Okay, so I think that wraps up the librarian's report, unless anybody else has kind of open it up to see if anybody else had questions following that my list. And
no,
if not,
I was going to tell Leanne that to thank her for the audiobooks. A lot of parents who used to read to their kids don't have the time to do it anymore. They're working. And so having an audiobook for the kid to listen to and read with instead of, parents always better, but because of that. And whenever we get mega books donated to us, you get them. So, or the tuning library somehow.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something for Leanne's efforts. So a lot of what Ashley and I talk about this year is like this integration more so with communications, like letting the foundation subscribers know about the programs at the library and conversely, So we actually work with the Carmel Unified School District communications director. That's not her actual title, but it's Jessica Hall. And so if there's like a well-known author or if there's something bigger that you want to bring, we're doing like this parent-teacher lecture series that was created way before I arrived, and pandemic sort of, nullified that. But last year we started to pick it up again. She's really great, but her plate's super full. But I'm just saying, like, if you would like to collaborate, if there's things that we can do together, if there's a way we can get that which you feel is important in front of her, and we can do something, we're definitely open to that. So reach out and say hello, and we'll figure it out if you want.
Yep, Leanne and I have been working on something. I think I mentioned it to you briefly, Alex, but I'll be bending your ear about it this afternoon when we have our meet together.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Yes, lots of collaborations available here in the community, so we want to make sure we take advantage of those. All right, next on the agenda, receive the treasurer's report and approve the check registers for June, July, and August. And I think, John, we're going to turn this over to you in the faraway lands.
Okay, let's start with July through June of 2021-22. We ended the year really good. We were $19,000 under budget. The only things we were over on was the audit, which we adjusted for next year. And for promotions and staff training, the promotions went up because we did a lot with the library opening up. So we had a lot of extra expenses. And then the training, the staff, the new staff, would put us a little bit over. Other than that, we were really good with that 19,000 left, which I think we can find use for that rather than turn it back and maybe put some other add-ons to this year's budget. We go back to July and August's budget. We're right on with everything. Things look a little over just because we have an awful lot of yearly, in June, July, we have a lot of yearly billing for internet stuff like that. Other than that, I think we're really good. Any questions on like the checks? I sign every check when I'm there, so any questions on them, please ask me. And anything I don't understand, I go to Leslie and she explains it to me. So any
Great.
questions,
Thank you, John.
I'm open.
Susan, do you have any questions for John? No. Ashley, do we, I have a question. I don't know if it's for Ashley or John. Since John is in France, I see. Do we have a backup signer for him?
Yes, we do have a backup signer. So I made sure, especially with the pandemic right now, it is Katie and I, if John's not here.
That's fine.
You're still authorized to sign checks, Tara. I don't know if I didn't put Susan on the account, and Phil's still authorized to sign checks. So we have plenty of bench depth in terms of signing off.
Great. Just want to make sure that
yep.
we're happy that John is in France, but we want to make sure that we're still
we're keeping operations going. Yes,
exactly.
And he will review the check registers. Yes, all of that.
Perfect. It's amazing what we can do these days via the internet. Okay. So John, I don't have any questions. So I guess what I will do is I will move that we approve. I'm going to get my motion here right. I'm going to move that we approve the check registers for June, July, and August 2022.
I second
So
it.
I need a second for that.
I second it.
Thank you. Leslie?
John Krischer,
Yes.
Susan Murphy,
Yes.
Tara Twomey.
Yes.
Approved. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, number 6 on the agenda, review various plans related to library facilities. And I think this came at our request in some ways to kind of get a better understanding of what all the various things that were happening, both city and at the library level were going on. So Ashley, gonna turn it over to you for, I think,
Yes.
probably a summary.
Yes, so as we embark on this master plan project that is part of the city's capital improvement plan, there are a lot of plans floating around out there, and plans that we as this board have kind of touched on or discussed, but impact how we will look at the master plan should be used to inform anything that architects design or do, and things that we should be thinking about as we go along and look at our buildings. So what I've attempted to do is kind of provide you with a synthesis and a summary as we go forward, and we probably will reference these plans again, kind of a quick guide for all of us on what these plans are and what they have to say about our library buildings in particular. And I kind of put them in date order because I like to things in nice order. So the first report here is the 2013 facilities report that was done by Harrison Associates. I remember this one in particular because they did a lot of research in local history when I was the local history librarian. So I helped out on that one quite a bit. It attempted to do a condition assessment of each facility, what its use was or had been, if it was a building that had subsequently been closed. This was based on site visits, research in local history, interviews with staff, looking at past plans, all of that, and making some recommendations about optimizing their use. In 2013, they recommended that, in particular with the park branch, that the water intrusion issue in the basement be remedied. You'll remember back in 2007, 2008, we had some major flooding down there that was undiscovered for some months, and that caused quite a bit of damage. And so that's since been remediated. Shortly after I became director in 2018, we did have a flooding incident in the basement. However, it was not due to the natural spring. There was a burst pipe. So that has been fixed. And in addition, earlier this spring, the generator that triggers the sump pump and the double, it's a double system, was replaced. And that's now, you'll see it there between the bollards on the side of the building. Remediation has been done to fix some of the leaky spots in the concrete roof, but it still is a natural spring, so there is some small amount of water intrusion. Every time it rains, Public Works and I are down there double checking to make sure everything works. So that is a situation that's getting better. I don't know if the basement will ever be habitable, but it's not a pool, so that's good. And in addition, the branch was painted and recarpeted in 2017. So that happened after some amount of time. At the Harrison, they're looking at, improvements and maintenance things for those buildings. Their regular assessments of pest damage. We've replaced our water heater. So we have work that has been getting done on both buildings that are important maintenance things. We, of course, we completed the gathering place, fulfilling one of our major library needs for places for people to have their book club meetings, have city meetings, whatever kind of thing you want to do. And that part of that project also increased access to the building by using the back door so that people with mobility issues don't have to go up those front steps. So some of those things that were in the facilities report in terms of those maintenance things have been ticked off in both buildings since 2013. So we're making some slow but forward progress. Now moving on, in 2016, there was an ad hoc committee that was, 2015, an ad hoc committee was formed. The Board of Trustees, members of City Council to look at expending the Keith and Virginia B. Evans Fund. And Susan Kent was engaged to work on that project. The multiple community workshops were held to gather information, and Group 4 Architects was engaged to look at the uses of both buildings and what the potential were if there was to be any remodeling or renovations done to the buildings. One of the things, once that report was completed, was the recommendation of the park branch to become the two-story building, but also consolidate all library services in one building and to use the Harrison Memorial Library as a history and visitor center. This was just a thought exercise. No funds had been raised for anything like that, but this was not well received by the community. They have very strong feelings about the use of the Harrison Memorial Library and it continuing to be a library, fully operating library. So that plan has subsequently been set aside, but we did learn from that and are thinking about those things as we move forward with the master plan. Next up, we have the 2018 ADA transition plan. This is quite a hefty plan, and this sets forth city facilities and all of the grounds in the city. We're on a hill. It's not great for accessibility. The slopes are everywhere. I think Dolores is maybe our flattest street. But this plan makes recommendations for improvements and categorizes those improvements as priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and priority 4. I didn't go into priority 1 and 2. Those are things that the city should be planning for and actively doing. They can be done. They're not overly expensive. With priority 3, those are ones that when the buildings were built or sidewalks put in, they were in compliance with the current code, but they are no longer in compliance, which they should be fixed, but they don't need to be. And then priority 4 is mostly the Harrison Library, which is difficult corrections. So we're not in compliance. It's a historic building, and it would be a significant financial and architectural impact to do whatever the improvement is that they would recommend. So priority 3 items for us could be, updating all the guardrails leading up the staircases in the Harrison building. So things that there's handrails there. Well, no one's gonna fall down. There's something to grip to, but these would be ADA accessible. You see an example of that leading up to the 4 steps up to the gathering place, how those guardrails look different. Nosing stripes on interior and exterior stairs. So those are the white lines you would see that are in the carpet, or yellow on the case of the front steps in the main library, so people don't trip and they can see where they're going. This is important for people who are visually impaired, to help them better see, to the extent that they can, where the steps are. Increasing accessible signage. So thinking about, what colors we're using, if we're using colors for people who don't see in color, including for fixed signage, Braille with those, and you'll see that outside of the gathering place. So that's an indication of where that gathering place project is a good indication of where I hope we can make these types of improvements throughout the library. Priority 4 types of things are, installing an elevator to reach all 5 levels, if even possible, at the main library, at least 4 of the 5 levels. That is a huge project. Restrooms are in the basement. Is there a way to make them more accessible for that level that steps up from the entrance level of the building? Interior ramps, and what would that look like, and how would that impact things, if that's even possibilities? So those are the bigger, more complicated types of things that are included in that ADA transition plan. And that brings us up to where we are now, which is working through the library strategic plan, the one that we adopted right before the pandemic hit, to work on a facilities plan for both library buildings that would identify opportunities for improvements. So we're talking about ADA improvements, our maintenance improvements, all of those types of things, to make our spaces more welcoming, make them more accessible to all of our patrons. And then, so that's where we are now, is working on our master plan, looking for an architect that can kind of start us off on this process as we contemplate how to better provide our library services and how changes in the building can support us in doing that. And that's what I have for our rundown of all the various plans that are floating around out there that will help us to, in the end, will help us to, I think, really do some good work.
So let me again turn to the trustees. John, so Ashley, thank you. It was a helpful overview to kind of see what the various things are. John, do you have any questions or comments for Ashley?
Yes, one question I have is, she's talking about like the railing of accessibility for ADA. Is that the board's responsibility, or is that going back, since that's the city building, is that the city's problem, expense?
So
one question.
If we're talking about it, well, the city does have a obligation under that plan to complete a certain number, spend a certain, I don't know what those exact parameters are. But now that we have this plan, it is a roadmap to how those improvements can be made. The priority 3 and priority 4 ones are trickier. So like I said, the city, when and where they can around our library building, is making those changes. Whether or not, if the question is, will the city contribute money to a renovation project because we may be making ADA upgrades? That I don't know, and that is something that would be a future conversation with the city, because I think without the renovations, some of the changes some of the smaller changes, like the striping in the carpet and those types of things mentioned at priority 3 level, will continue slowly to get made. But for some of those bigger things, that's a whole different conversation with the city in terms of funds towards that.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of put the lines where we set and where they set. I've talked to some of the employees.
Yes, especially as we are embarking on this process. I think over the next year, as we work through master planning and see and get concrete numbers behind things, I think then that gives us room to go forward to the city and say, hey.
I just want to make it accessible for everybody. You know, I'm going to get that done now, and and find the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my only comment on that. And I have been talking, I know the city is looking at carpet and painting, because I've talked to Cleve about that, and he said they're doing numbers on that, putting new carpet, painting the Harrison Library. So that's all the only comments I have. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I
Susan?
have a couple of questions. One, we're not in any danger of the city attorney shutting us down because we're not ADA accessible, because
no.
we've had that problem in Monterey. That's the only reason I asked.
No, we have identified what, in that ADA accessibility plan, we have identified what our challenges are in both buildings, where we're improving, and that provides us with a roadmap, and the city is continually working on them. We're not the only building in the city that has these issues at all. And there's quite a number of facilities that I think we've only got 2 people overseeing all of our different various city facilities. So they are working on prioritizing those things where they can. And the priority 4 ones are ones, again, that have been identified that are either financially or they're really tricky and challenging. And that the state makes that caveat in there, like, we understand what it's not an off the hook thing, but it's like, this is why this is like this. And again, we have a historic building with the Harrison Memorial Library that isn't subject to, again, with like the priority 3 codes have changed. So I think it's good that we're having this conversation, because I think improvements where and when they can be made should be made. And again, the city is continually working through that plan. I mean, the report, once you print it out, must be about that thick for all the cities. So you see, I mean, and over the last few years, you've probably all seen things around town, like the curbs, where we've got I don't know what the technical term is for the yellow bumps, but we've got the yellow bumps now. So that type of thing, they are happening all over, and those things benefit us too. So, and we just had the main library steps restriped in bright yellow. They were white, unfortunately, before, but now they're bright yellow again. So those things are happening slowly but surely.
No, the only reason I asked is
we
I've
will.
been working with Monterey on historic buildings and that kind of thing. So I'm curious.
Susan, did you have other questions or comments for Ashley?
Any other questions?
No? Okay. I see Susan shaking her head. All right. Ashley, Park Branch, as far as ADA, is fairly good or not?
Ish. It's still not great though, because I think my understanding is that the ramp leading up to the front door of this building is not at the correct slope that it should be at. It's too steep. We do have other doors that you can come in without needing to use the steps or the ramp, and that's the side door that we've been using over by the book drop, and the back door that staff typically uses. The other thing that we've been working on and are very aware of is the placement of all of our shelves in both buildings and how much space there is. So at the kids library, we had 2 back in corner where nonfiction was. You couldn't even bend over to shelve back there, let alone get a wheelchair through. And so we moved those shelves around so purposely so that was something. Now, for people who work at the library, we still need more space, like in local history can get a little tight. So these are all things that we will be considering as we do this master plan projects, because while the Park Branch is better, it still needs work in that.
It still has some issues.
Accessibility, yes.
Okay. All right, great. That was the only question I had. All right, well, thank you very much for the update. I think that's all useful information for us to have kind of in the back of our mind as we move forward. All All right. Receive a report on the Board of Trustees financial policies. I'm not sure if John or Ashley is going to take the lead on this.
I'm going to take the lead on it, and then I think John and I will probably tag team it as we have a discussion at the end. So this was a report that was requested to come forward on where we are with our financial policies and to provide staff with direction. And this came out of the last few years with the pandemic, us not spending quite as much of our budget. We're under budget typically anyway, but in the case of 2020, we didn't take the last disbursement, and CPLF retained that in the endowment. And then, as John mentioned earlier in this meeting, at the end of last fiscal year, we were $19,000 under budget, which is a lot of money and could be put towards, other project types of things. So, and part of the reason for the under budgeting, one, the last few years has been just staffing issues with expending funds for ordering. We do have automatic ordering turned on in some ordering areas, but not all of them. But also librarians are really good at finding deals. So we try to do really solid estimates, but we're also very good at being fiscally responsible and looking for those savings where we can. So that has contributed over the years to us being under budget as well. I've included here the section of our Board of Trustees bylaws that govern how we do our checks, how we adopt the budget, our unrestricted funds, which we have an unrestricted operating reserve that includes our 6 months of expenditures for the current fiscal year. So, and we didn't tap any of our reserves during the pandemic. It was a weird time, but it wasn't one of those things. And I think part of the operating reserves and the logic behind that, as well as the restricted equipment fund, is if all the computers blow up all at once, what do we do? But that wasn't quite the situation we found ourselves in with the pandemic. So we have our unrestricted funds, donations that we get that come to us go into this unrestricted fund. And then we have the restricted funds. So we have equipment replacement reserve fund. And then there's other funds that we have within this, like the Keith and Virginia B. Evans fund. And that's gone through later in this staff report that are restricted in how we can expend them, what their purpose is for as we receive that donation. The Board of Trustees has always managed the library finances, approved the check register, approved our operating budget. Up until 1986, also did some modest investing of those funds. So kind of what CPLF does, but not really, which is a lot of work. I mean, CPLF has a whole separate finance committee made up of finance experts to watch over this and to do that work. And so in 1986, the library director looked into investing into the local agency investment fund, LAIF, which the state had started, I believe it was in the early 1970s, to provide a place for our municipalities, library boards such as ours, to invest funds that are low risk and can be taken out there. If the state experienced some sort of financial crisis, those funds don't get taken from us and used to apply to paying down debt or whatever. Those are here specifically for our use. The state can't do anything with those. This is the LAIF investment funds are also mentioned in our cash handling and receiving of money policy. Typically what we've done in the past is taken any overages that we have. So the $19,000 that we didn't expend would be transferred into LAIF. We haven't done a transfer into LAIF for quite a time. And John and I have been talking about LAIF in particular and what we do about those overages, because since the mid 2000s, and I did include that chart of the LAIF funds and what the interest rates have been since it started back, 70, I was a little bit late. The interest rates since the economic recession in the mid 2000s have been abysmal. So we're not seeing a huge return on our investment, putting that money in there. So this item is before you, and I've presented some potential options for where we move from here. One, we need to do some revisions to the cash handling policy, and these are minor revisions that we'd started before the pandemic, right before the pandemic hit, and then we were no longer handling cash and that got set aside. So I would like to bring that forward to the board and complete that process, and some other minor adjustments that I would like to suggest. I think it would be worth exploring the idea of engaging a financial professional to advise on alternate strategies, or as we look at these policies, thinking about when we know we're going to be to the good, or we think we're going to be under budget. If for some reason if it's a number, and we can also, look at how we're spending money. And I think we're going to be spending more money as we add staff in, we add programs in. So we may not be as under budget as we are, but if for some reason we are, considering a separate policy, and thinking about LAIF funds versus what we did at the beginning of the pandemic, which is not taking either last disbursement and having the Carmel Public Library Foundation keep those funds, or somehow returning money to them to say, hey, put this back in the endowment and grow this for us, because that's what their expertise is, and that's where the money will grow the most. I think it won't be in LAIF. LAIF is great and LAIF is safe, but if we're looking to continue to help support increasing the endowment, that could be a potential option and a potential policy change. That if we're getting into, May, June, and we're looking at next year's fiscal year budget, but then also seeing where we are in terms of where we predict to end the year, we can say, hey, Carmel Public Library Foundation, please just provide us a check for this amount. We're not going to need the full amount, and here's why, here's, what project we're not going to finish, or whatever the reason is, so that they can hold on to those funds and keep them invested. And John, I'll let you jump in in case I missed anything, but this is just kind of, as we percolate on these things, this is why this is before the board, to think about how we are handling the reserves and the LAIF accounts.
As Ashley is saying, last year our returns are terrible. I've talked to several financial people in town. I've talked to a retired professor of economics in Berkeley, and we're very limited to what we can do because of being a government entity like we are. And all my research, I think we'd probably be better off, as Ashley was saying, the money we don't use, let the foundation have, because they have very good investors and they can do more with the money than what we can do right now. We may get more back with the prime going up. Prime's been down so low for so long. When we first went to LAIF, if you looked at things, we were getting around 7%. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting about 0.23, 0.30. Maybe things go back up and we'll do better, but I have to agree that we should let the foundation keep, because they can get a much better return than we can. But another part too, like the 19,000 we have this year, I'm in favor of spending that on things that we may need. If we need more computers or anything like that, that we can buy them now and maybe at a lower cost and buy them 2-3 years from now. But that's only my opinion, and it'd be up to the board to make a decision like that. That's about all I really have to say on that. But like I said, Ashley and I have done a lot of talk about this, and I've done a lot of research there's a lot of financial minds in Carmel, but when I tell them what I have, they basically says there's not an awful lot you can do right now. The way you're structured, I've showed them our paperwork and what we can do. And I think the foundation is the best way to go.
Okay, thank you both. Let me see. So Susan, do you have any comments or questions? I think what we're looking for here is direction to Ashley and John about kind of maybe how to proceed.
Are we going to be getting more LAIF interest now that the interest rates have gone up? And I know the stock market has been going down. And I know that most of the Carmel Foundation money is invested in the stock market. So those are two of my, I don't know if they're questions or concerns or whatever.
Well, so I think I can take the first one, which is the interest rate. So I think if you look at the historic interest rates, they would seem to track at least the prime rate, as John said, and that was much higher before 2009, 2010, before the kind of what we call the Great Depression. Or Great Recession. So I would expect that given that the rate has gone up significantly in the last 6 months, the Fed has been continuously raising that rate, that over the course of 2022, you would see that interest rate come up. So that would be my expectation, is that it's not going to stay at 0.32 with the Fed rate where it is. But I think to the point of, I actually looked back to see what, a decade ago, we actually have more money, and quite a bit more money that we're holding than we did a decade ago, right? I think we were under $1 million when I go back and look at my very old agendas. And my old financial reports, and now we're up over 1.5. And so there's, and some of that is Evans is not actually included. We didn't have the Evans funds in some of my earlier budgets. But so I think that, we are continuing to build. I think that goes to 2 points. One, there's some money there to potentially spend on projects too, going forward. I do like, and I would be interested in exploring, or having Ashley and John explore with the foundation, kind of what their thoughts would be on us returning excess monies to them, for them to take care of and shepherd. Because I think I agree that running a separate but parallel process seems to not, in some ways, that doesn't make good financial sense. We've already talked about how, at least our view is that the foundation has a committee. They have some people who are experts in this area. They retain, I know you guys have financial, I'm looking at Alex. Alex, I know you guys have financial people that not only within the board itself, but you actually have outside people too. I think you have, I don't know, last I heard there were 2 different funds that, I don't know if that's still the case, but you've got a whole system set up, and it seems like for us to replicate us, that's just a cost to us, without necessarily any different, any improved benefits over what the foundation could do with the fund. So, I think that these ideas, so I'm going back to the list. So on the list of recommendations, it seems to me like the revisions to cash handling policy is something that should just come back to the board. Those sounded like they were relatively minor, and we can just put those on an agenda when you're ready, Ashley. I think the second point here is engaging a financial professional to advise or alternate financial strategies. I think what I'm hearing, and again, I'm going to, after I'm done, going to come back to the board folks and to Ashley and Alex and see if you have any thoughts. It seems to me that rather than engaging our own financial professional, maybe one thing we should explore is this partnership with CPLF and how that might work, and whether that's within the confines of, what we can do. Can we give money back to the foundation that we've already taken? I'm actually not sure we can do. I
don't think we'd be able to do that. I think it would be a matter of when we get to the end of fiscal year, saying, because the disbursement check doesn't come and actually get deposited for that last quarter until after July 1. So it would be having that knowledge that we've spent up to this point, the disbursement would be a less amount, so that would be.
Right. So I think that sounds right to me.
And engaging an extra investment person to invest our money would be an extra expense that we probably can do without, frankly, because that's fairly expensive. I mean, a good percentage of your money is going to that person or company.
Right. And I think first and foremost, I think that, yes, conversation with Alex and potentially going into the finance committee to see how this would work and what this worked. But I think most importantly, and I think this is a really good discussion to have, but more important than that, and it's something we've talked about, is expending the funds that we've budgeted for and getting back to spending up to that last, penny or dollar and getting back to that. But having this as a plan in place, because again, the last 3 unprecedented years, and again, thrifty librarians, I think this would be a good exercise to undertake and a good conversation to have.
And look, happy place to be in a place where not only we provide amazing programs and services and we've got the support of the foundation, but we're under budget. This is this is a happy place for board to be. But I do think having a conversation with the foundation would be helpful. I'm less interested in engaging, as Susan said, a financial professional, at least at this point. I think there are some other options to explore before we go down that path. So I think that would be. I think
I meant that is simply as somebody who could consult with us as part of this process, not somebody that would take over investing the funds, but can consult with us. But I think starting that conversation with the Carmel Public Library Foundation first is, we can revisit that later if needed, but I don't know that we will need to do that.
Okay. And then the last point here is, in the future, developing a separate policy regarding the investment of unexpended funds for LAIF and investments and CPF allocations. I think that's all wrapped together, right? It
is kind of what we've been discussing, but obviously got very in my head for that last number 3. So figuring out, do we need to update our bylaws? Do we need a separate financial policy that says, we are going to continue to allocate funds to LAIF, or we are going to only allocate to LAIF if and when these circumstances, otherwise funds would, unexpended funds will be handled this way, or that type of thing. And it may be, and again, that's the conversation with the Carmel Public Library Foundation for unexpended funds, whether that takes precedence over LAIF or what the domino kind of effect would be for investment of funds.
So, so I guess my question then is, does conversation give enough direction to Ashley and John, who I'm assuming are going to continue to work on this together, in terms of going forward?
Yes.
Do you have a sense of the board? From
yes,
this conversation?
I have a sense of the board. So this is great, and I'm going to work on policy revisions, and then start a conversation with the Carmel Public Library Foundation, and we'll go from there. And I can, when appropriate, come back to the board for a report out on where we've landed and any subsequent policy recommendations or policy options for the board to consider.
Okay, and then in terms of the LAIF funding, which is kind of, again, it's kind of mixed in the bottom. So I see that we have kind of about roughly $300,000 in our checking account. Is that typical for us to carry that much?
That's a high number, and that is where we would usually transfer over to LAIF. So
and so I think figuring out what, my guess is in the checking account, it probably even makes less than it would us in LAIF. And so based on what I've seen and maybe that, I'm assuming we don't have an interest-bearing checking account in the first instance. Maybe we do, but maybe we don't. So I think one question would be, I'm not sure, to investigate kind of how we deal with so there's one, how we deal with excess in the future, but there's also this question of, we're potentially sitting on, I seem to remember we used to keep that account at about 100 and change. So we've got $200,000 that really should probably be moved to LAIF, or we should do something with it. And so I think maybe as part of the direction on this action item, or on this item, would be some direction to say, let's figure out what we're going to do with this excess money sitting in the checking account. And if it means it goes to LAIF, then that's fine. Then it goes to LAIF, and we make that transfer. And if it doesn't, then there's some alternative for it, and I don't know what that is. But
Yes, and we can always transfer it into LAIF. And then let it sit there and earn interest. And for instance, if the board's going to contribute towards master plan or parts of the construction project, it will have, even if it's a small amount of interest, as you say, it will have been earning that interest, and we could do a LAIF transfer back to do that. So the money is always accessible to us. Once it's in LAIF, it's not there forever. It is there for us to use for reserves or for projects.
Right. So then
I've always thought of it kind of as our savings account. You know, we've got the operating budget from the Carmel Public Library Foundation, and then the library board, both restricted and unrestricted, are the savings that we have just in case.
So then I would just I would wrap up on my piece by just saying, then I think we should, consider moving that money over to LAIF and just, do that. Okay, so let me kind of circle back to the board folks to see if there are any kind of final thoughts. It sounds like Ashley and John have enough direction, but John, do you have any more questions or comments?
The only comment I have is the Fed's already announced they're going to have 3 more raises. So we might be getting a lot more out of our LEAF fund. Let's look at it by next July. We may look at a whole different situation. And there's an awful lot of people in town, financial people, who are willing to give free advice and don't want any money. You'd be surprised how, when you say it's a library, how people open up. And just the professor in Berkeley talked to me for half hour, 45 minutes of the ideas he had. And so I think there's things out there. What I'm trying to do is get the most return for money so we can use it for projects at the library. And direction-wise, I understand where you're coming at perfectly.
Can I interject for a second?
Yeah, sure, Alex.
Just to address John. So the foundation exists to supply, funds for, as a primary source of funding. And as Ashley mentioned, we have a finance committee, and you may or may not be aware, but we also have worked with 2 different fund managers. One is Monterey Private Wealth and one is Merrill Lynch. And the foundation has spent a lot of time vetting, and we made a change about 3 or 4 years ago to the local company, Monterey Private Wealth, which works with Schwab. And so we have those 2 kind of experts who we work with on a regular basis that helps with our endowment funds. We have separate funds set aside, different accounts and things for Agnes Fraser Gump Fund. We have an innovation fund. So, I'm happy to discuss with you more, but about how we grow the endowment. We've grown the endowment from $6 to almost $12 million in less than 5 years. I know that a lot of that's with the market, and the market is fluctuated quite a bit. But I'm just saying, to Ashley's point, we do have a lot of really good experts on the finance committee, as well as with those 2 organizations that we rely on. So we'd be happy to talk to you about that too. Because like you said, Tara, to go parallel paths, it's almost cannibalizing efforts. It doesn't make sense. It's like having 2 401k plans, like you just have one, but, and we used that 2 system that was from George White, who has since passed, but he was in finance, and he really wanted that checks and balances approach. And it's ironic, but most of the time the fund managers come out almost at the same percentage. Last time they were dead on 10%, like the same percent for the last quarter. But anyway, I'm happy to let you know more about how that foundation manages funds, if that can be helpful at all. So.
Great.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Go ahead, John.
I think it's a great, her idea is fantastic. When I looked over what we can do with our money, we're very much an awful lot of restrictions, a lot more restrictions than what a fund manager would be. And I think it's a great idea to give what money we don't use back to the foundation to invest. But the money we have right now, we have an awful lot of restrictions on. If you look into the restrictions we have, there's not much you can do with it. There's only certain items you can do with that. That would be probably their financial advisors would probably have better handle on it than what I do. But what I looked at it's very, very restrictive. But I'm willing to talk to them. I'm very interested.
Great. All right. So again, I think there's enough direction there that we can move on from this one, and get my agenda here. Okay. Last one, to consider if and when to return to in-person library board meetings and provide direction to staff.
So this is just one of our standing items that we have on here now because it's the state of the world that we live in. Still finishing up the pandemic, I think. And it's supposed to be a gnarly flu season. Currently, the city is requiring meetings being held in the City Hall Council Chamber. All people attending them and running them be masked. So that still stands. So as such, if we were to return to in-person meetings in the council chamber, we would need to wear masks. We would continue to do hybrid. So if people wanted to Zoom in, they could. But we would be wearing masks in the council chamber.
All right, let me start with John or Susan, if you have any comments or thoughts on what you would like to do going forward.
And for any of you board members who, John here is traveling, and I'm grateful to him for joining on his vacation. He would be able to continue to do that with the hybrid model. So it wouldn't restrict us that way. If people are traveling for work or fun or whatever, board members could still Zoom in.
I would like to meet. I'd like to meet in person because I've talked to you a little bit, Tara. I've really never talked to Phil, and I've never met him. So it'd be nice a little bit. It's kind of awkward on Zoom, but the masks are a restriction. I'm okay to go back and do a hybrid, but it would be up to the rest of how you'd want to do it. The masks are very restrictive when you're talking.
And we can continue to revisit this every month until, there's no rush for us to be back in person. It's just taking the temperature of the group.
Susan, do you have thoughts?
No, either way is fine for
either
me.
way?
I could usually come into I could do it on Zoom. I like coming into Ashley's office, and I have another meeting at 10:30 in the other room. So,
okay. So I guess the question is, do we need to make a decision for the next meeting, or?
If you want to, if there's no general consensus, we can just continue this item and we'll just have it on next agenda's meeting, and hopefully we'll have Phil with us, and we can continue to discuss. And maybe in the interim, the city will change up those masking rules with regards to meetings in the chamber.
So of course, I think my preference is not to have to be in City Hall with a mask on. I think it defeats some of the. I want to be in person. But I'll try to, so I would prefer to continue to do it online, maybe for another month. If the city is not going to move off its position, then I think maybe, kind of to John's point, just getting back in the same room might make sense. But I guess my suggestion would be that we, for next month, well, really this month, right? End of this month.
Right. October, for the October meeting, we stay Zoom.
For the October meeting, we continue in this fashion. Let's get some input. Hopefully Phil will be able to participate. We can get some input from him too before we switch to going back in person, but then potentially have our last meeting of the year, which will be a combined November-December meeting in person. Sounds like that might be something to shoot for, and just see how the city policy is coming along. So how does that sound? It's getting, I see the moon in John's,
yes.
in John's picture. John, how does that sound to you? Online for next time, and maybe shoot for our last meeting of the year in person.
You're looking at, it'll change by January, our January meeting.
Yeah, or the January meeting, that would be fine too. Susan, how does that sound to you? Okay. All right, so let's go. Next time we'll stay via Zoom, Ashley, and Leslie, and then we can revisit it and potentially go in person for either the last meeting of the year or the first meeting of 2023.
Very good.
hopefully this city will continue to reevaluate its policy.
And it has, it just, we did just change up some of the masking rules in city facilities with regards to vaccination and boosters. So things are changing. It's just a slow process.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, a little bit longer today than usual, but it's been a while since we got together. So thank you for everyone for sticking with. Susan, I know you got to go. I think story time's going on. I may walk uptown. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Leslie, thanks for getting us all back online, working with our crew. All right. We'll see everybody at the end of the month.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye.
Do I need to move my